Hello, today we're going to talk about something that is kind of sad and indicative of how small a world it is. We recently were visiting the battleship Iowa in Long Beach, and that ship has a special connection with Cod, sadly. You're probably familiar with the 1989 turret disaster, in which case the center gun loaded with a full charge of propellant had a premature detonation, killing, I think, almost 60 of the men in the turret, including a former Cod employee, a young guy by the name of Clayton Hartwig, lived in the Cleveland area. We employed Clayton back in the early 80s as one of our hourly workers, a kid who would cut the grass, paint the boat, give tours. We have a letter from him to my predecessor, Captain Gehring, asking about employment opportunities aboard the Cod. And of course, back then we were a very simple operation. We had World War II sub-vet shipkeepers who ran our ticket booth, such as it was. And they had the ability to hire a couple of hourly workers to do the heavy lifting, if you will. And from about 1983-84, one of those workers was Clayton Hartwig. I remember him just a few times. He was just one of the couple of kids that was down here. He and I helped paint a 40 millimeter twin 40 that we had on display here. God only knows why we decided we needed a twin 40 from a destroyer or a destroyer escort. We wised up and sent it on its way to a surface ship that needed it. But Clayton was just one of these very motivated young guys who loved the Navy, wanted to eventually join the Navy, and in doing preparation for that, worked here summers on the Cod. He did join the Navy and kind of was out of sight, out of mind, until that tragic day in April 1989 when that turret explosion occurred. And then, of course, the nation mourned the loss of those brave men, and we became aware instantly that one of our own, a young guy from Cleveland by the name of Clayton Hartwig, was among those killed in the explosion in the turret, which made us very sad. Initially, the Navy investigation couldn't find a smoking gun, if you will, appropriate analogy. And in their efforts to protect themselves, as we all know, big organizations have a built-in motivation for self-preservation. Rather than find a mechanical, technical reason, they began looking among the crew, and on very thin evidence, initially pointed at Clayton Hartwig. They came up with a scenario where he was a homosexual who had a love crush on a fellow crewman that was unrequited, and that he decided to commit suicide with his friend, which doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to a lot of the men on the Iowa, but that was the Navy's focus for quite a while. Sandia Laboratories and a whole lot of technical brains were brought in, and ultimately nothing was ever proved. The evidence for the unrequited love thing was based on, a couple of comments, a mention in a letter that could have been a good friend. The fact that the young guy had a book, I remember reading that book when I was a college kid. It was something you did in the college library or the college bookstore. And the Army Technical Manual, improvised explosive devices or weapons. A lot of people have that book. Doesn't make them mass killers. Well, the story percolated through the media and the population. We were approached by his sister, when the initial the first preliminary investigation pointed toward Clayton, his sister, being a fierce advocate for her brother and the men of the Iowa, asked us to use the Cod as a site for a press conference. I was just doing PR at the time and giving tours. It fell to our director at the time, a Navy captain, who politely declined to make the Cod available. He was worried about perhaps ramifications, both personal and for the boat. And so Kathy Kubicina, his sister, went to a veterans memorial site here in Cleveland and had her conference. I felt terrible about it. And of course, a subsequent, more in-depth investigation basically said there's no evidence that we can point to any one individual or any scenario involving a person, or, and for that matter, any technical reason. So it remains that it was a terrible tragedy that took the lives of brave Navy crewmen.
The morning of April 19th, 1989, my husband and I were remodeling the bathroom at our home, and I had gone to a hardware store down the street. And I'll never forget, I was parked at a red light about a block and a half away from our house, and it came across the radio that there was an explosion aboard the USS Iowa. But I didn't react at all, thinking that he could be in danger that morning, because he was scheduled to leave the ship, and the letter that we had just got prior to the accident a day or two before stated that he wasn't going to participate in any more shoots. So we thought he was safe. I'd like them to be remembered for the people that they were. They all had families, they had wives and children and parents, everyone that would miss them. They aren't just faces in a newspaper when an incident happens.
We join today in mourning for the 47 who perished and in thanks for the 11 who survived. They all were, in the words of a poet, the men behind the guns. They came from Hidalgo, Texas, Cleveland, Ohio, Tampa, Florida, Costa Mesa, California. They came to the Navy as strangers, served the Navy as shipmates and friends, and left the Navy as brothers in eternity. Remember that you have the admiration of America for sharing the burden of grief as a family, especially the Navy wives, who suffer most the hardships of separation. You've always been strong for the sake of love. You must be heroically strong now, but you will find that love endures. It endures in the lingering memory of time together, in the embrace of a friend, in the bright questioning eyes of a child. And as for the children of the lost, throughout your lives you must never forget your father was America's pride. Your mothers and grandmothers, aunts and uncles are entrusted with the memory of this day. In the years to come, they must pass along to you the legacy of the men behind the guns. And to all who mourn a son, a brother, a husband, a father, a friend, I can only offer you the gratitude of a nation, for your loved one served his country with distinction and honor. I hope that the sympathy and appreciation of all the American people provides some comfort. The true comfort comes from prayer and faith, and your men are under a different command now, one that knows no rank, only love, knows no danger, only peace. And God bless them all.